And now for a cultural call-out. We sure don't appreciate that.
Today's cultural call-out isn't necessarily something that's limited to the church. So we're going to be exploring something that I've absolutely seen in the church, but it's also something that I see predominantly in our culture in the United States. And that is gentle parenting. It's something that can definitely affect faithful mothers, fathers, and everyone in the church who is trying to raise a family right now. So let's check out a video, then we'll talk about it. All right, so for context, this is a fad that's been happening for a while where mothers show how they plate their children's lunches, their breakfasts, things like that. I'm not sure where it started. I'm not sure why it's here, but it's here now, and we have it in front of us for some reason. So
it's
we're going
like
to watch
Stonehenge,
this.
you know? It just exists and nobody knows why. Or
Nobody
where it
can
came
explain it, yeah, but it's just
One of
there.
one of those mysteries of the universe. Like, oh, I guess we're watching people make food for children now. So
Yeah. So let's dive in. Here we go. This says, plate my 1-year-old's lunch with me.
Plus the yogurt pouch. See all the food on my couch? I really need a steam cleaner.
Okay, we'll stop it there. For some reason, I thought that was going to be shorter than it was. It felt long. Okay,
felt like
so
an eternity. That went on for a long time.
that did. Let's get some of your initial reactions. What do you think of when you see something like that when it comes to gentle parenting? I know gentle parenting is a term that means a lot of things to a lot of people. I think for the most part, people interpret this kind of parenting as gentle parenting. Go ahead.
So, for the record, because Hannah will kill me if I don't make this distinction, right?
Yeah.
This is not gentle parenting. I mean, if you've ever like listened to your child and heard that they're angry and say, "I hear that you're angry. This is, let's figure out why you're angry, and then let's fix the problem." You've gentle parented, right? Like just treating small humans like humans and understanding that emotions are okay to have, but also giving them a strong disciplinary, structure for them to grow in. That's what gentle parenting is. That phrase has become a coverall for no parenting or free, completely neglectful parenting or permissive parenting. So we can use gentle parenting, but that's just not what it is.
So it kind of strikes against the emotionally repressed parenting style, where it's just like, hey, deal with your problems. Nobody cares about you. Just get away from me.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah. And it's become like this umbrella term for like every kind of parenting that's not actually parenting at this point, which is unfortunate. So we can move forward with that. But what she's doing here, this is not parenting. This is not, you're not teaching anything. You're not guiding or strengthening. You are simply avoiding the hard thing, which is to actually feed your child good food. And you're showing everybody. I don't understand why you're showing everybody this. Like, why? What is the value of showing? Like, I think I saw donuts. I saw a protein shake in some milk. Like I saw a girl plugged into the screen, while she's being handed sugar.
Yeah, she's done multiple videos, and that was another one of her videos that she did. The one we watched was cutting up chicken nuggets and Cheetos and all of that, but she has done multiple of these videos, which brings up a great point. She's been doing this for a while, and this is something that absolutely her couch can attest to. And that was probably one of the biggest call outs for me. It's just like seeing this couch, this poor couch that is covered in all kinds of schmutz and stains and crusties. And I also want to pay attention, call attention to what you didn't really see in that video, and that was the daughter, the girl that she was plating the food for, which I don't know. Plating seems a little bit generous there. It seemed more like spilling. She was just kind of spilling the food. She chopped the knife around a couple times. It seemed more like she was feeding an animal than she was feeding a kid. She was just like, okay, the kid's sitting on the couch, plugged into the screen. And the mom just drops it over on the couch and just says, all right, here you go, Sue-wee. Here you go, piggies. Eat up, and don't bother me. I'm going to be over here editing my video of plating.
Well, that's the thing. And I have no ill will towards this woman because I have 5 kids of my own. I have done the production style, like slop it on the plate and hand it out. The one thing that I haven't done that I am tempted to do, and which she's kind of fallen into this temptation, is to give them the food, turn something on, and then go do my own thing. Right? There are some nights where it's like, man, I want this plate of food and I want to sit on the couch and I want to watch something by myself. Like that would be ideal for me right now, Yeah. But you can't do that. Like what you need to do is you need to sit around the table with your children, eat food, look in their eyes, and talk about their day. That's one of the most important parts of every child's day is when you reconvene around the dinner table and you actually discuss how they're feeling and what they're processing. Because a lot of people don't see their kids for a lot of the day. The kids are off at school, you're off at work. You probably get like, I don't know, 2 hours most with your kids at the end of the day. And most of that's just pushing them through chores and pushing them through bedtime to get them unconscious as quickly as possible. So you need at least like half an hour where you're sitting together just talking about what your day was like and seeing, getting an insight into what they're feeling for the day. And that's what's missing here. This is like, here's your food. Your brain's being lit up like the 4th of July right now between the screen and the sugar. I can just hear the neurons just crackling, There's like
it's like a Disney cruise. It's got everything you could ever want. It's just like, oh
yeah, her brain is just glowing out of her ears at this point, with all the dopamine that's rushing around in there. So
yeah,
she's getting fried. The parent obviously is tired. She looks exhausted and she looks uninterested in engaging, which every parent feels that. So she's decided to step back, or maybe she's sitting with the daughter and watching something, which is a step closer, but it's still just not ideal. So yeah, and I feel like a lot of people rush into parenthood a little bit as part of the culture, right? And then don't realize how difficult it is. And rather than rise up to the challenge and command, the space, then, they just kind of have kids. There's a difference between parenting and having kids. And this is an instance of just having kids, right?
I think this is an important distinction to make because this lady wasn't mothering her child. This lady was babysitting. Okay. So there's a big difference. So babysitting, it's short term by nature. It's just short term. And the main job of the babysitter is just to keep that child alive. The babysitter has no skin in the game. So if the kid wants donuts or cookies or Cheetos or whatever, it's like, yeah, sure, take it. As long as you're not bothering me and I can collect a paycheck, I'm fine. Now, mothers are actually tasked with a very, very different job than a babysitter. And let's kind of explore a little bit the family proclamation and see mothers, but also fathers, because that was another big question is, where is the father on this? Okay, so
where's the dad?
The dad, this lady, she's been publishing videos like this for a while. I assume the husband or father has seen these. And in any kind of relationship, if you're an equal partner, you should be looking at that and saying, maybe let's do a little bit better for our kids. Okay, let's see if we can get that a little bit higher, get a little bit more effort. We don't need a steam cleaner for our couch. we just eat at the table, okay, and just prepare something that's going to be actually good for the kid that helps them long term. Because that's the danger of babysitting. I call this approach gentle parenting. I call it credit card parenting. Because you basically just do whatever it is at that very moment to just pay the bill. Just like, okay, boop. But the thing is, what you don't understand is that it accrues interest, and that racks up debt at an alarming rate, and you have to make payments on it. And if you don't, you're going to get completely overwhelmed by that debt. And that's what you see with a lot of them.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about mothering. So mothering, I mean, it encompasses a wide variety of responsibilities, including nurturing, teaching, disciplining, and providing emotional support. It involves guiding the child through all stages of life. So this is a very active term, mothering is. Okay, so let's focus on that for a second. So it's a very proactive approach. This, what we just saw, that babysitting, that was completely reactive. Because that approach is, if the child is unhappy, I need to give them something to make them stop crying. And what am I going to do for that? Well, if they cry, I'll turn on the TV. If they cry, I'll give them the Cheetos. I'll give them the chicken nuggets. But the thing is, you're allowing your child to make decisions that they are not equipped to make, specifically about their health. Because what are you doing by giving them that kind of food? You're giving them addictions to foods and sugars that they're not going to be able to handle. They're not equipped for that. There are kids that are getting diabetes at alarming rates today. I mean, obesity is on the rampage across America right now. And it's like, this is one of the reasons behind it is not being intentional about your parenting. So back to the father. Okay, where's the father?
Yeah. Well,
in the proclamation, we read, the husband and wife have a solemn responsibility. So this is a task. It's a responsibility. This is a task, an undertaking, to love and care for each other and for their children. Children are an heritage of the Lord. Parents have a sacred duty to rear their children in love and righteousness, to provide for their physical and spiritual needs, and to teach them to love and serve one another, observe the commandments of God, and be law-abiding citizens wherever they live. Husbands and wives, mothers and fathers will be held accountable before God for their discharge of these obligations. And I think that's something that a lot of times we don't really talk about, is that accountability factor. Is that at a certain point, there will be a reckoning. There will be a judgment day where mothers and fathers are going to be held accountable before God for how they reared their children. And if you're doing a mostly reactive approach, you're doing your child a big, big disservice. And I didn't mean to cut you off. It sounded like you were going to say something. Go ahead.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Good.
well, I totally agree. Yeah, I think that, so one of the things that gentle parenting should be is helping you realize your accountability and how you approach your children in a responsible way where you can actually be present enough to teach them, right? Shout out to Ralphie, Simply on Purpose on Instagram. She does a great job with that stuff. I've been to one of her conferences. It was very enlightening.
Cool.
She doesn't have, I don't think she has any boys. I think she has mostly girls. So I'd love to see some more. Anyways, we'll cut that part out.
Yeah.
But I can tell you right now that the definition you read about motherhood, where you talked about nurturing, guiding, instructing, those things all apply to fatherhood to some degree as well.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at that video and we say, where's the father? I'll tell you where the father should be. He should be where that TV is, right? That TV is on because that father's not there. And that father needs to replace that TV as soon as possible, right? He needs to be the thing that's engaging with the child, helping them learn or grow, or just playing with them and interacting with them, because time is obviously limited when you're the main breadwinner, right? So he should be in there helping with the children while the mother is making dinner, or vice versa. You know, you can switch those roles at any point, as long as you're engaging the child without using any kind of dopamine hit possible that you can just grab on hand, right?
Right.
So the structure and the order from that house is missing, and because of that, you can, it's sad, but a lot of people replace their spouse or the other parent with a screen, and you throw enough processed food at somebody, and that can
that'll shut them
the
up.
problem really quick. Yeah,
just get into this comatose state of complete amusement, that turn off their brain. I mean, the word amusement literally means without thought. And so, like, these kids are just kind of sitting around, just existing all day, just completely plugged in, just like, okay, where are my Cheetos? Where's my Capri Sun? Give me my sugar water. And it leads to all kinds of diseases, but also it leads into a handful of mental disorders as well. So you can't be surprised that ADHD is on the rise when you see something like this. Okay, so like ADHD. And I know you have a spicy take on ADHD, but I look at it and I say, okay, ADHD, a lot of times parents are like, okay, the next step when a child cannot pay attention is to go to the pharmacy, get a prescription for Adderall. And so like you have like this entire generation of kids that are like, I can't pay attention without my pills. And then they get on these pills that are changing their brain's makeup, their chemical makeup, and then they're going through life, and then they're racked with other problems and side effects that come from that, like depression, anxiety, and all of that. It's just like, We have more treatment, more medication, and more therapists than ever before, and yet mental disorders are on the rise at an alarming rate. And I look at this kind of parenting style as definitely not the entire reason behind it all, but not productive to helping a solution. Helping find a solution.
Well,
So one of the things that I did want to point out is the idea of an obligation or a responsibility. That language indicates that there is some level of duty and that there are some things that you are responsible to carry out and to execute on as a mother and as a father. So one of the verses in D&C, it's 107, 99 through 100. Listen to this. Wherefore now let every man learn his duty and to act in the office in which he is appointed in all diligence. He that is slothful shall not be counted worthy to stand, and he that learns not his duty and shows himself not approved shall not be counted worthy to stand. I tell you, I feel like a lot of people, when they become parents, they get this advice. And I know because I got that same advice. And it is horrible advice. As soon as you get this, just take this advice, throw it right in the trash. Just don't even bother holding it. Because the advice is, listen to your instincts. You'll know what to do. Terrible, terrible, terrible advice. Nobody knows what they're doing when it comes to their instincts. Like, if I applied that to working out at the gym, if I just said, yeah, listen to your body, listen to your instincts, you'll know what to do at the gym. I get on the treadmill, and 2 minutes later, my instincts are saying, get off and go home. Get back on the couch and eat your donuts, okay? That's what my instincts tell me to do. And so when it comes to parenting, you can't just default to that, like, well, I'll know what to do, because you're going to default to that path of least resistance. Where a lot of times, intentional parenting comes with a lot of effort, a lot of discipline, a lot of suffering on the part of the parents, and teaching the child how to control themselves, to discipline themselves, their minds, their behaviors, their emotions, to regulate themselves, and to become productive members of society. I cut you off. What were you going to say?
Well, we don't have to go back too far into it, but my hot take on ADHD is I think like 99.99% of cases are misdiagnosed as boredom. I just don't think it's a real thing. And, except for like the 0.01%, because you take any kid who has ADHD and you let them play outside, or, you give them a video game, they get locked in, they are focused, for hours they can go, right?
Like I've seen that video of like a kid sitting in front of a computer screen, and it's like, it's got math problems on it, and he's like spinning around on his chair, and he's like doodling with his pencil and stuff like that. And then it cuts to a scene of Star Wars being shown on that computer screen, and he is riveted to the screen. You cannot get his eyes off the screen. He's paying attention. He's in the zone. And so I do know that I actually have some really good friends that are on Adderall. They have ADHD, and they point to something like that, and they're like, yeah, the problem is that it's just that much more difficult for us to pay attention than it is for you normal people. And so the response is always like, it's kind of alert. It's like a skill. It's like a muscle, like being able to pay attention and to focus your mind on something. I don't think it's something that you either have or you don't have. I think it's something that you have to work on and discipline and build and strengthen, or you're going to look around at everyone else that has done that and say like, oh, I don't have that. Where's my pill that makes me like these people?
Where is it?
Yeah,
absolutely. And I'm almost most of the way with you on the don't listen to your instincts. I think I'm gonna have some debate here.
Okay.
I think that listen to the right instincts, or understand what your instincts are telling you, is the real. Because I think that there's a huge case that humans have been around for thousands of years, and that we naturally have built into our collective conscious and through our genetics that we pass through certain instincts that help us to keep our children safe and to raise them right. Most of that's on the mother side, actually, when it comes to, when they need to eat, or when, if they need to be comforted or not, things like that. There are certain instincts. I think on the father side, it's a whole different ball of wax, because, your instincts also are to, accumulate as much fat as possible and move as little as possible. Like evolutionarily, biology, like that's just what your body's going to try and do is not work as hard as you need it to, right? So to be really intentional about what instincts you're paying attention to and thinking through everything you're doing, like, oh, I really want to yell at my kids right now. Why do I want to do that? You know, that's why it's called parenting and not childing, right? Because like you're focusing on you yourself as the parent and how you need to change yourself to give the framework to your kids to teach them and guide them. Because like you said, nobody gives you like you don't there's not like a decent class you can take, you know, like, or at least not one that's mainstream in our school systems that teaches you how to appropriately raise a child. But for a lot of people to say, you'll handle it, it'll be fine. Like, not if you turn off your brain. Because if you turn off your brain, then we get this permissive, neglectful stuff where you're dumping Cheetos on a plate and throwing it to the girl who's, you know, in her TV cage, essentially, right?
Like she's still in her pajamas. She, you know, she's just in this big enclosed habitat, you know, just like a tarantula or like a goldfish, where you just go by, you sprinkle the food in there, you're like, hey, and then you just leave.
There you go.
You know?
Yeah. So yeah, that's an absence of thought from both the mother and daughter. And again, we're not picking on her specifically. The only reason we're using this video is because I don't record myself at home, you know, plating food. So if you were to look at my life, you'd certainly find a situation where I've done something similar for sure.
It's not to say that you can't have bad days. Every parent is allowed to have bad days, but every day cannot be a bad day. And that couch attests to the fact that this is not a singular incident. Like all of that's a museum. You know, it's like they have painted that couch with neglect, and then it's gross, it's disgusting. And where is this going to lead the child? Where is this pathway going? And this is where the parents need to step in, because the parents have that experience. They have the mileage to be able to say, all right, as the fully functional adult with a formed or mostly formed brain, let me make what is a good decision for you. And in order to do that, I mean, let's look at some of the consequences of permissive parenting or gentle parenting. So this is from PubMed Central. Love these guys. This is great. So this is from the government. This is a study that they did on some of the side effects of permissive parenting. And one of the major callouts, I highly recommend going through this study. It's got a lot of great sources. The test they ran was very, very interesting. It was well documented. One of the things that they found was that one of their main findings, I wrote it down right here. Of greatest relevance to our hypotheses, permissive parenting was positively correlated with a couple of bad behaviors. So first, deviant peer affiliation. So having bad friends, making bad friends, being more susceptible to having bad friends. So that's the first negative consequence. The second is a higher frequency of alcohol use. That's a little bit alarming to me. You know, so it's like if you are completely hands-off with the kids, that's going to put them into some dangerous scenarios down the road that you might not be able to see just yet. And so it's really important that parents get out of that credit card parenting perspective and they start taking a longer term view and saying, okay, if I teach my kid discipline right now, this is something that will help him later on when he needs it. But if the kid, I mean, obviously a 3-year-old doesn't need the discipline to say no to alcohol because it's never going to happen. However, if you fail to teach that kid discipline over the years and to respect your authority and to lean on you as a guiding figure, then they're going to realize that they are the authority that all the authority that they need in their life. And so when they're confronted with bad friends or with alcohol or these other dangerous and potentially corrupting influences in their life, they're going to be like, well, I've never had rules or restrictions put on me before. Why should I now?
Yeah, well, I think if you think about it, like, what does alcohol do? It's a substance that changes how you feel, right?
Right.
So I think that there's an overall lack of comfort internally that they're seeking to change through a different substance. So I think that pulls in, you know, like, if you're not actively engaged with your child and teaching them how to feel and what they're feeling and validating when it's good and reprimanding when it's off the track, you know, and helping them teach in that sense, then they're not going to know how to process what they're feeling and they're just going to hate it. So they're going to find something that'll change it, right?
Right.
Like, oh, when I drink this alcohol, I don't feel bad anymore. That's the subconscious thing that's happening there, and that's what's leading to that alcoholism, right? So,
Right. It was based on a pattern that they were familiar with. It's like, whenever I feel discomfort, I need something. I need an external, they have an external locus of control to put on my spectacles and my tweed suit and be all
right.
psychoanalyst on you. It's, yeah, they realize that they are not in control of their emotions or their behaviors, and that they need external sources to validate themselves. And all of this is basically a form of what is known as temporal discounting, which is encapsulated in like a Jerry Seinfeld skit where he says, like, I love nighttime Jerry. He's a great guy, but morning Jerry hates nighttime Jerry because nighttime Jerry makes all the stupid decisions, and morning Jerry is the one who has to pay the bill on all of those. And that's what a lot of people are doing with their parenting style. Is like, they're like, hey, I don't need to put any kind of rules or restrictions on my child, because they parent to a state, and that state is happiness. And happiness is a very, very idiotic state to parent to, because what's going to make the kid happy? Screens, Cheetos, Capri Suns, things that are completely detrimental to the long-term well-being of that child. And so it's on the parent to be able to recognize that, take a couple steps back and say, maybe I need to act in kindness and say, this may make you a little bit miserable, but broccoli and vegetables are actually something that are good for you, and reducing your screen time, teaching you manners, teaching you etiquette is something that will actually help you to succeed, instead of just saying, all right, whatever makes you stop crying, I'm going to do that. Just plug it and just move on with my day, you know?
Right. Well, I think that, I mean, this is a call to the benefit of some level of gentle parenting, because I think anyone who's authoritative in their parenting practices gentle parenting to a certain degree.
Right.
But like, when you plug kids into screens, my running theory, Hannah and I talk about this often, is that they don't process any emotion while they're watching the show. All that emotional energy just gets backed up until the screen is off, and then it all is unleashed again. So you're just creating a battery.
Pushing the pause button.
Yeah. And that all comes off. And my favorite thing to watch is when parents plug their kids into a screen for a couple hours, and then the kids come off of it, and they're just a nightmare to deal with sometimes,
they're
right?
Little monsters, yeah.
Yeah, and the parents cut it off and they say, "I can't believe you're acting this way. I gave you exactly what you wanted." It's like, yeah, you gave them heroin. Like you lit up their brain with fireworks, and then you turned it off before they were done, or you didn't let them. You gotta have some grace for them after that. Be like, hey, I gave them this thing which is highly addictive, and it's very dopamine heavy. When they come off of that, I need to be a little compassionate about how they're feeling, because if someone would walk into me and turn my episode off halfway through, I'd be freaking ticked, right? I'd be mad. Yeah. I'd be like, hey, what are you doing? So I think that when it comes to,
it's kind of like the difference between aggression and being aggressive or being assertive. So
yeah, absolutely.
Being aggressive is saying my way or the highway and demonstrates no respect for the other person, where being assertive says, hey, we need to do things my way, but it's also giving the person the respect that they need. It's standing up for yourself and saying, no, I'm not going to follow along with you, but I still respect you as a person. And I'm not just going to invalidate everything that you say, but I'm also not going to allow you to tell me what to do or dictate my emotions or my actions. To cut against that bad advice of trust your instincts, because that I feel like more times than not will lead you down the path of gentle parenting. My wife had an experience where there was this gal who told her, like, one day she's just like, oh, I just hate being a mother. It is just so hard. And more days than not, I just find myself just plugging the kids in, letting them watch movies while I try and just kind of do some things that I want to do. And then she told Janelle, she was like, my husband came home one day, the house was a complete mess. I hadn't even showered. The kids were all just in their pajamas. They had been watching movies all day, just eating whatever they wanted. And I was just like, I feel so bad about this. And the husband had a chance. He had an opportunity to say, let those feelings motivate you to learn your duty and to rise up to it. But instead, the husband went in and said, hey, at least the kids are alive. You've done your job. And it's like, swing and a miss. Okay, no. The kids deserve a mother that's going to be there for them. The kids deserve a father that's going to help them to get that kind of environment. The kids both deserve better than that. They deserve someone who's going to teach them the power of education, of discipline, of routines, the power of manners and etiquette. That's the secret to success these days, because there are so many gentle parented kids that are going out just doing whatever they want, just throwing no caution to the wind when it comes to manners and etiquette, that if you teach your kid just basic manners and basic etiquette, it's a lost art, but if you teach it to them, it just opens all the doors for them. Like, every adult that hears etiquette, it just comes off like sweet music to them. They're like, oh my gosh. And I'll tell you, I've seen this as I've tried to get my kids to practice manners and to teach them etiquette and all of that. They say please, they say may I, they ask, they don't tell, they do all of these things, very, very basic things. And I tell you, the adults, like his teachers at school, all ask Chanel, they're like, what do you do at home? Because we need more kids like this. So what does that do for him? It's like the adults in his life all want him around. They love him, they support him, they don't view him as a burden. And what does that do for his friends? Well, his friends really appreciate it too. And they want to spend more time with him. The parents of his friends actually really like having him around, and they invite him to more things. And so just by teaching basic manners, you're helping your children stand out and be a light to their community, which is it's a low standard, but like if you could do it, it's incredible what it does. And by not doing that, you're doing the inverse. You're cursing your kid to live with every single adult and every single child that they interact with being bitter and angry and resentful at them, because these kids, they're not being respectful, they're trampling all over rules, they're really hard to deal with. So if you don't parent your kids, other people have to step in and do the work that you failed to do, and that's really tough. Last piece before we wrap this up. I know I've been ranting, but this is something that hits close to home, because we spend a lot of time talking about this. Instead of relying on your instincts, I totally recommend reading books. There are people have been around for a really long time. Parents have been around for a really, really long time. They've compiled and condensed wisdom into books. Read these books and just try and teach your kids. I had a BYUI professor once that said, like, one time I realized that, like, he was a biology professor. He was just like, one time I realized that I had not studied relationships. And I realized that I had biology, and I realized that I was an expert in biology. I knew everything about it, and I felt really comfortable and great with it. I was excited by it, but I had not taken that same approach and zeal towards my relationship with my wife or my relationship with my kids. And he's like, how much better of a relationship could I have if I just educated myself on that? If I studied, if I learned what to do and how to do it? There's a lot of power in that. And from what I've found in my studies, one of the best approaches to parenting, like an antidote to gentle parenting or this permissive parenting, is encapsulated in this little graph. Let me pull it up real quick. Right here. So, hold on, right here. Okay, right here. This is the parenting funnel. This is an amazing little principle that teaches a lot in a really simple format. So, basically, what it does, it says, like, as your children grow, they need to have limits and structure and routines and restrictions placed on them. And then as they grow older and older and begin to get more capacity and more self-control, then they're allowed more freedoms. So that by the time they're around 13 to 14, they're a teenager, they can pretty much parent themselves. And that the parents then become more and more hands-off. What I've seen with gentle parenting or permissive parenting is it seems to flip that on its head, where the child is given unlimited freedoms at a very, very early age. And then the older they get, the parents try and squeeze tighter and tighter and tighter on these kids. And it ends up backfiring. The kids are like, I don't like these rules. Why are you making me do this? I've never had to do this before. But you're setting yourself up for a hard time parenting your children and your teenagers when you do that approach. Absolutely, I'd agree. Just go out there, read some books, what are some of the materials or books that you would recommend that you have found super helpful?
There's a couple. I don't have them off the top of my head. I think the last one I've been reading was The Collapse of Parenting, which was an interesting one. There's a good one. We can put it in the description
The
though.
Coddling of the American Mind is one that one's really, it's not necessarily a parenting book, but it kind of is. It teaches that idea of growing into your freedoms. That one's great. I've also I've read works by Dr. Spock. I don't recommend it, but I feel like it's at least worth getting in there and saying, like, what is Dr. Spock saying? Because his books were sold by the millions for years at a time. I think it was 30 years. He was selling at least like 10 million copies. And that parenting model was this more gentle parenting of like, the kid will clean his room when he's good and ready to clean his room. Instead of saying, no, the kid should be listening to his parents and be viewing them as an authority figure in their life.
Yeah, there's one. I'll have to look up the title, but what it is by a psychologist who actually focuses on positive reinforcement rather than negative reinforcement, and that it isn't necessarily tied to gentle parenting exclusively, but the idea of focusing on positive reinforcement versus negative is just a universal, psychological fact that it can benefit children much greater if they understand why they're doing something, and if they're positively rewarded by societal praise or by, good, happy parents, all that stuff, right? Because the real goal is you want your child to be as well liked by adults by the age of 4 as possible.
Yeah.
Right? If you have a 4-year-old and your 4-year-old can interact with adults and they don't run screaming or they don't cringe and grimace whenever your child walks in the room, they're set up for success. They're going to be okay. That goes right along with what you're saying about etiquette and manners. So whatever you need to do to get there is what you need to do to get there, right? While building as much trust with your child as possible. So when things get tough, they feel safe enough to come back to you and confide in you when they have questions about God, when they have questions about relationships or jobs and stuff like that. So.
Well, it's the greatest gift you can give your kids is to make them as desirable to everyone around them as possible. Like that's going to open doors. That's going to lead to great opportunities for them. And it doesn't take like this loads of cash. It doesn't take a trust fund. It doesn't take like this Harvard education. It takes simple common sense parenting rules. The books that I really like were written by a couple of medical doctors. One of them is Dr. Gary Ezzo. And they start off with like a great sleep training book. Highly recommend it. It helps get your kids to sleep 12 hours by 12 weeks. We recommend it to everybody, but they also have created books all the way up until teenagehood. And I've read those books and they have been phenomenal. They kind of introduce that idea of the funnel. They help parents understand what their roles and what their duties are at the different stages of a child's development so that you don't become too strict and too sheltering, but at the same time that you don't become too passive and open and kind of allow your children to call the shots. So we can post some of those links in the description below. Any final thoughts? This one went really long, but this is something that hits home.
Yeah, my real spicy take is if you look at the actual definition of gentle parenting, you'll find that it aligns a lot with the way and the format that Christ teaches. So that's a hot take. So we'll see.
Right.
But again, the term, the actual definition of what gentle parenting is so narrow compared to what people perceive it as that I might as well be saying a completely different term at this point, right? It needs a new term, and just like the classic Mormons aren't Christian thing, like the misnomer there is just like, it's hard to overcome, so might as well just leave it. Right?
Just abandon it. Yeah,
absolutely. But yeah, no, I could go for hours on this subject, so we better cut it off there.
We'll wrap it up. I know if I don't mention this, Chanel's going to kick me for it later. The one book that I would recommend for mothers to kind of learn their duties and fathers, I think it's great for everyone to be on the same page. Like just because a mother is primarily responsible for the nurturing of their children does not exclude the father from learning about that as well. So you should be reading those same books. You should be reading every kind of book together so that you can both support each other as much as possible and understand what you're doing. There was a book that Chanel was given when she was a new mom called The Art of Homemaking by Daryl Hoole. And boy, if you want to see controversy, this lady, she teaches some great tips about how to mother your child. Granted, it was written in the 1950s, so you have to approach it from that perspective, understanding times were very different back then. But like, she encourages women to take care of themselves, to dress up every day, and so that their kids are surrounded by people that are taking care of their presence, that are, she suggests cleaning your house, keeping it clean and tidy, so that the home becomes a place of cleanliness, that it becomes a place of order, a place of calmness and peace. And she suggests taking joy in what a lot of parents view as these menial, mundane little things. They kind of view this as drudgery. And this is like that version of that lady in the Instagram video. That is what all feminists think motherhood is. They're like, oh, it's just keeping your kids alive. It's not. There is so much more value to nurturing, teaching, instilling virtue, and watching these kids grow up, applying those virtues and reaping the fruits thereof is the greatest joy you can experience. Now, this book teaches you that how to find joy in these little tasks of homemaking, nurturing your children physically, nurturing them emotionally, mentally, and teaching them and raising them and shaping them versus just keeping them alive. And so definitely recommend that book. We'll put links to everything below.